All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a problem that, let's be honest, hits us all, every single day. We are just flooded with information. So how in the world do we find what's actually true in all that noise?
I mean, just think about your day so far. You've probably already scrolled through endless news articles, social media feeds, emails. It's a constant sea of data, right? It's overwhelming. So in this absolute flood of competing voices, how do we find solid ground? How do we actually separate fact from fiction, the signal from the noise?
Okay, so even though this feels like such a new 21st century problem, the good news is there's actually a formal framework designed to help us navigate it. It's called information literacy. And really, you can think of it as a toolkit for the modern world, a way to learn, how to think clearly when things get complicated.
So this term, information literacy, it's not brand new. It was actually coined way back in 1974 by a guy named Paul Zurkowski. And he had this quote that really hits the nail on the head. He said, "As beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so information is in the mind of the user." That's so profound, right? It means information isn't just data sitting there. It's value, it's truth, it's meaning, that all comes from what we do with it inside our own minds, how we find it, judge it, and ultimately use it.
And this really gets at a critical distinction. A lot of us, maybe you remember this, grew up with what was called bibliographic instruction. Basically, how to use the card catalog at the library. It was a skill for a specific place. But information literacy, that's a whole different ballgame. It's not about a place. It's a lifelong process. It's a set of critical thinking habits for a world where the library is, well, it's in your pocket, it's everywhere, all the time. So, okay, what does this toolkit actually contain? How do you do it? Well, the Association of College and Research Libraries laid out these 5 core competencies. And you can see it's a whole process, a full cycle. First, you figure out what you actually need. Then you go access it effectively. Step 3, and this is crucial, you evaluate it critically. Then you use it to accomplish something, and finally, you have to think about the ethics, the legal stuff around it. It's a complete framework for engaging with knowledge responsibly.
Now, to really see these skills in action, we're going to look at a place that might surprise you, a real proving ground. We usually think of this stuff in terms of, school or the office. But it turns out information literacy is being practiced in an incredibly high-stakes environment. Faith communities.
Yeah, check out this quote from a librarian who works with future pastors. She says human formation goes to the heart of developing the seminarian in terms of character. See, in this world, information literacy isn't just about getting an A on a paper. No way. It's seen as fundamental to human formation. To building character, developing self-awareness, basically all the stuff you need to lead other people. It's about who you're becoming as a person and a thinker.
And listen, this isn't just some abstract idea. It's put into practice. Take a look at this number, 62%. A national study found that 62% of Black churches sponsor tutoring or literacy programs. That's a huge grassroots commitment to education. It shows this really deep tradition of equipping people right there in their own community with the tools they need to learn and to engage with the world.
And for pastors and other clerics, think about the stakes. They are operating in an incredibly high-stakes environment. Every single week, they have to use these skills to interpret really complex, ancient texts, tackle huge questions about life and morality, and then build a message that shapes an entire community's beliefs. I mean, their ability to filter and use information directly impacts how people think and live. The pressure is immense.
So, okay, how does this actually play out? Let's go micro. Let's look at the pastor's process for one of the most intense, information-heavy jobs they have, writing a sermon. It's a perfect, real-world example of information literacy in action.
When you look at studies of how pastors actually prepare a sermon, you find this really interesting model. It's a masterclass. But what's so fascinating is how it starts. It doesn't start with research, not in the traditional sense. It starts inwardly with prayer and reflection, thinking about the people. Then they go to the primary source, the Bible, and do this deep analytical study called exegesis. It's only after all that groundwork that they start looking at secondary sources, commentaries, and so on. And finally, they pull it all together. This whole process is designed to protect original thinking and keep the focus on the audience.
And that step, consulting secondary sources, is a huge test of critical evaluation. Just look at the different kinds of commentaries they might use. They're all different tools for different jobs. You've got your devotional ones, which are great for personal inspiration, but maybe a bit light on deep analysis. Then there are homiletical ones, which are packed with sermon ideas, but you see the challenge, right? The risk of just borrowing someone else's thoughts is high. And then you have the super technical exegetical commentaries. Incredibly detailed, but you need specialized knowledge to even use them. A good pastor has to know exactly what tool they're picking up and what its limits are.
And the challenges they run into in this cut and paste world, they probably sound pretty familiar, right? Think about this. Studies show it takes on average almost 7 hours to prepare one sermon. So you've got these intense time constraints. You've got the temptation of plagiarism with tons of stuff available online. You've got the flood of sources to evaluate, the need to keep learning, and maybe the biggest one, overcoming your own personal bias. These are the exact same struggles we all face in the digital age.
Okay, so let's pull back from the pastor study and go beyond the classroom. Because seeing these skills applied under so much pressure in a real-world setting, it really shines a light on a huge challenge for all of education. How do we teach this stuff so that it actually sticks with you for life and not just for the next test?
There's actually a name for this in education. It's called the knowledge transfer problem. That's a big one. Here's how it works. A student can learn to be super critical when evaluating a source for a history paper, right? But then they'll scroll through their social media feed and just accept a crazy news headline without a second thought. The skills don't transfer. They get stuck in the classroom context where they were learned. So maybe we need to reframe the goal here. Instead of thinking about information literacy as just a skill you use to get a grade in an academic context, we need to see it for what it is in a life context. It's more like an awareness. It's something called metacognition, which is just a fancy word for thinking about your own thinking. Or, like we saw with the pastors, maybe it's even a kind of virtue, a core part of who you are as a clear, thoughtful person.
And look, getting to that point, it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. This chart is actually based on a study of teachers learning these skills, and it shows the very human stages we all go through. At first, there can be resistance. It feels like too much work, or maybe it's even a little threatening to our old habits. Then we might move into curiosity. You start to see the worth in it, but you're still hesitant. And finally, you reach acceptance, where you're all in, you're engaged, and you're actually sharing your success with others. It's a process.
And making that journey is absolutely essential. Why? Because ultimately, this whole thing, this search for truth, this affects every single one of us every single day of our lives.
It's easy to think this is a brand new problem, something the internet created, but it's not. The core challenge of telling truth from lies in a world full of competing voices, that's ancient. You can go back almost 2,000 years and find texts, like 2 Peter in the New Testament, warning people about false teachers and pleading with them to be discerning, to think critically, and to hold on to what's real.
So here's what it all comes down to. Information literacy, it isn't just some dusty library skill. It is the absolute foundation for being a lifelong learner. It's what you need to be a responsible citizen in a democracy. And at its very heart, it is the simple but unbelievably powerful act of thinking for yourself.
So, we've looked at how faith communities tackle this, but now I want to turn the question back to you. Think about your own community, your job, your life. When you're out there in your own search for truth, what's your process? What tools are you using? What habits do you rely on? It's something we're thinking about. Thanks for joining us.